Hello, folks, and welcome back to True Crime Phenomenon with the Phenom of the Week, Scott Peterson. This is episode 6, The Verdict. Now, boy, do I have a humdinger for you guys today. This one is going to be interesting, and the next episode is going to be even crazier. Now, just kind of go back over what we went over last time. Just a quick summary is the trial started. Prosecution is looking very foolish because every witness that they put forward ends up being a defense witness. They put a bunch of false information out there that is demonstrably not true. And essentially, Mark Garagos is doing a really good job at kind of setting them up and knocking them down as they go. Now, this is kind of where things change, right? So the reason I labeled this one The Verdict is because this is where the turning point begins. So where we left off is essentially Amber Frye's getting ready to come in and testify, and it's when everything changes, the whole mood of the jury, not really the press coverage or the feeling outside of the courtroom, but certainly the feeling inside of the courtroom. There's a lot of information I'm going to reveal here that's really frustrating and really sad because it really shows that Scott did not get a fair trial, period, end of story. You know, you can debate with me all you want on that. Listen to the show and afterwards leave in the comments. Do you think Scott got a fair trial or not? Period. Because if he didn't get a fair trial, neither do you. And everybody deserves a fair trial. Now, you'll see 3 different jurors here. I just wanted to, throw up some of the pictures of the jury. The woman on the right, I think her name is Rochelle. She was an alternate juror that was basically crying in the audience as the trial was going on. And they essentially intimidated one of the jurors, in fact, the juror foreman, to get off of the jury and replaced him with this young lady that was clear. Like, first thing she says when she walks in is, okay, let's take a vote, let's get this over with and convict this guy. First thing out of her mouth. Well, what they actually have to do is they have to start all over from the beginning and review all of the evidence and go through that with a fine-tooth comb. That's what they're supposed to do. And you'll find out that's not what they did. Okay. So one of the major points of contention in this case is where Lacey's body shows up. Okay, where Lacey and Connor show up is right where Scott was fishing. Okay, so there could be one of 3 different possibilities with this. Either A, Scott killed Lacey, he's out there dumping the body, and it's exactly as all of these people think. Number 2, someone dumped the body where Scott was known to be. 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, they're broadcasting all over the news where Scott was, what he was doing, how he got there, which marina he was in, everything. And third possibility is just an absolute utter coincidence. She drowned there, or the killer, if there was a killer other than Scott, they just coincidentally put him exactly in the same place where Scott was fishing. Now, obviously, you know which way I'm leaning, but I'll leave that to you. All right, so one thing Scott was known for fishing on a whim. So the whole Nancy Grace thing where she's saying, well, why would he leave his wife alone on December 24th and go fishing? Well, Scott was known for this, okay? Absolutely known for it. So it's not a shocker for him to go golfing or fishing or whatever. Another interesting thing that I found was the jury instructions were, if there are 2 scenarios, now keep in mind that the judge outlined this, said if there are 2 scenarios and there are 2 likely scenarios, one shows that the party's guilty and the other one shows innocent, and both scenarios are viable, you must go with innocence. Repeat that again. You must go with innocence. Okay, you cannot convict somebody with reasonable doubt. And I think that's where this jury has just gone astray. And you're going to find out these jurors, I mean, It was like a kangaroo court they held in their own own little jury deliberation room. And they were basically kicking anybody off the island that didn't agree with them, starting with Justin Falconer. Juror number 8, I may make a whole video just on juror number 8. This guy is a piece of work, and it's absolutely amazing the things that he did between threatening people and screaming and yelling at people. He actually threatened one person that eventually got kicked off the jury. He did all these things and never was removed from the jury. Yet Justin Falconer was removed for far less than this guy. It's just crazy. And it makes you wonder, okay, well, what is the judge thinking? Just on juror number 8 alone, he deserves a retrial. Just on juror 8 alone. Now, the big thing in this case is there's no smoking gun. There's no aha moment. It's all 100% circumstantial, and none of the circumstantial evidence at all says that he was anywhere where he could have. All it says is he was cheating, he was lying, and he hid things, right? Well, the things that he hid was an affair, which, hey, look, I get it. He hid everything surrounding his affair. That actually makes sense to me. And if it doesn't make sense to you, then I don't know what to tell you. I've never had an affair, but if I did, I probably wouldn't go straight to my wife and say, hey, this is what I'm doing. And I probably wouldn't go straight to the police if my wife were missing, say, hey, by the way, I'm having this affair, been lying to her, said I lost my wife, all these different things, right? Now, when you're looking at the media, they do not have these same rules of evidence that you have in the courtroom. So they can just say whatever, whenever, whether the evidence is admitted or not. And they specifically chose evidence to bolster their particular point of view, their narrative. If it fits their narrative, it gets in, and it's uncharacteristically slanted towards the prosecution. So they have no rules that they have to follow. There's no integrity in journalism these days. They've removed the fairness doctrine. If you know anything about the fairness doctrine, we'll look it up. It was removed, so they no longer have to cover things fairly. They no longer have to give both sides of the story. And this has been a big point of contention. It's the reason why you have MSNBC, CNN, Fox News, is because the removing of the fairness doctrine. Okay, so closing arguments begin November 1st and November 2nd, and everything is essentially going to go to the jury by the 3rd. Now, this is kind of how they've planned things out, so everything can get there. Around election date, they start deliberating, and then after the election, they kind of move on from there and bring in the verdict. Okay. So keep in mind, the entire time before Amber Frey gets on the stand, the defense has 100% the upper hand. They're winning the case, at least by any competent analyst opinion. They are destroying the prosecution, right? So the case on the prosecution end was absolutely just kind of dry, very low baseline. And this all changed when Amber Frey, and more specifically, Amber Frey's recordings became part of the case. Because before that, there was literally nothing pointing to Scott. And I think this is where the jurors had it wrong. They were overly gracious with evidence from the prosecution and literally took every fact that the defense brought in and just basically waved it off as if it didn't exist. It's just bizarre. I do understand why, though, is the times, and you've got all this confirmation outside the courtroom. I don't care what they say. These people were getting confirmations from the media that they're on the right track, and that anything other than a guilty verdict means they were going to be lynched. So I think the only way for Scott to actually get a fair trial is in this modern day. Maybe even in the last 10 years, he could get a fair trial. But before that, I don't believe that there was a fair trial due to the media coverage. Not possible. Now, Like I said, very boring until Amber Fry gets up there. Now, one thing you need to keep in mind is Scott only saw Amber 4 times between that 6 to 8 week period. Now, if you listen to their phone calls, you would think, oh boy, they just, they were just hot and heavy for months and months and months, but it's just not true. So 4 times in that 6 to 8 week period. So Amber Fry was essentially brought in to be a character witness, not for evidence, because she didn't bring any evidence out. There was no evidence. All they could do was impugn the character of Scott. And having a bad character does not equal a guilty verdict. I'm sorry, it does not. And, if bad character was going to get somebody convicted, boy, Casey Anthony would be lynched. I mean, honestly, that woman did it. I don't care what anybody says. It's not, these are not even close to similar cases in that manner. Casey was just, the lies that she told were so outlandish, taking police on, trips to Universal Studios, and just bizarre. Anyways, I'm not going to go down that rabbit hole. So anyways, Amber Fry, just a character witness, not for evidence. Okay. Now, the father of Amber Fry got a hold of Gloria Allred, got her phone number, and that's how they secured Gloria Allred. Gloria Allred was going on all the TV shows defending Amber. Gloria is known as this kind of sleazy attorney that will basically do anything to get publicity. She's always marching her clients out in front of the media. If it does not involve media, I mean, I can't think of a case that Gloria Allred's been involved with that did not have media written all over it. And I would challenge anybody that if you need a lawyer, go to Gloria Allred, see if she will represent you like she did Amber Fry pro bono. If you're a woman, go to Gloria Allred, and you have a case that's not in the media. Go to Gloria Allred, see if she'll take your case pro bono like she did Amber Fry. I guarantee you she won't. Guaranteed. I guarantee you she made money somehow, some way, either from Amber's book deals, multiple book deals, or getting paid from the media, what have you, right? No scruples in these people. She should have been disbarred a long time ago. She's a disgrace. Now, Gloria is out in front of the media saying she's an innocent victim. She's just, the third victim of Scott. She's a witness and a victim. She's both, and Gloria is known for fighting for women. And in some cases, she's actually on the right side. I will admit that. But Gloria has a very specific type of case that she's willing to take. And that's where I'll leave that, okay? And the thing that Gloria was concerned about was 2 different things. She was concerned about 2 different stereotypes. One, the fact that Amber Fry was a massage therapist. And 2, the fact that she was dating a married man. Now, granted, she didn't know she was dating a married man. That's very clear. Another thing that ended up coming out was, you've got all these nude, risque photos of Amber Fry coming out in the tabloids. And essentially what Gloria did was she painted her into a victim, which, I mean, I really don't see her as a victim. She wasn't a victim. She was a willing participant, and she was doing her darndest to make sure she can insert herself into the case as much as possible. So Amber says that, when she walks into the courtroom was absolutely silent. You can hear a pin drop. And the absolute only noise you could hear was body shifting to look back at her. Now, keep in mind, this is the same woman whose first date ended at the Radisson Hotel. Okay, so, exactly what the jury's thinking about Amber, I don't know. But Gloria Allred effectively was able to lead a good campaign to get people to change their opinions about Amber. Now, one of the first things they show are pics of Scott and Amber, and it just made Sharon Rocha obviously sick. And that's a terrible thing to have to see. Your daughter being cheated on, and, her husband right there, and there's pictures of this affair that she's having, and then they put on the recordings, and the recordings really were the death knell for Scott. This is what ended everything. The recording, especially the New Year's Eve phone call when he's at Lacey's candlelight vigil, and he's pretending like he's in Paris at the Eiffel Tower, and just all these terrible things. Right. So Scott does eventually tell Amber the truth. He says that, look, I wasn't traveling. I wasn't in Europe. You know, my wife is missing. We're still married. And, you know, obviously you're not watching the news because I'm all over the news. And she said, well, you know, you told me you lost your wife. And he's like, look, Amber, there's different types of loss. You know, I don't know what to tell you here. He's caught in a really messed up situation. And I'm not going to defend him on this one. He's a scumbag. He did some bad things here, but that doesn't make him guilty. Now, if you listen to these tapes, it shows that he's trying to find his wife and resume an adulterous relationship. Now, this puts everything in question in the mind of the jury, right? Because in one hand, and he's telling her the entire time, look, you know, I love Lacey. I will try to find her. I don't care if you go to the media, do what you need to do. I'm still going to look for Lacey. I still love Lacey no matter what happens. So he tells her the truth. He never gives any type of evidence at all, you know, that he had any implication in his wife's death. Now, his sister-in-law, Janie, goes on camera and says, you know, the only thing that they've proved is that he lied, not that he murdered. And that's exactly what these tapes prove. The only thing they proved in these tapes and in her testimony, because she gave zero evidentiary type testimony, right? No circumstantial evidence, no evidence. It's just character, purely character. You know, and I was struck by a comment that Nancy Grace made, so I'm going to kind of paraphrase it here. I wrote it down. It says, Nancy Grace said, I listened to those tapes over and over and over, and they are like fine wine. They only get better. You know, so Nancy Grace is absolutely convinced of his guilt. Now, I wonder if the shoe were on the other foot and Nancy were defending this case, what would she think? Now, there's a taped call of Scott in prison in 2017, and his response to, you know, the whole affair and everything was, I was weak and I was a vain person. You know, and it really, at the end of the day, it compromised the search for Lacey. Now, Fry would constantly push and push and push for answers, constantly asking Scott, did you kill her? Did you do this? And over these very clear, direct denials. And he never incriminated himself on any of these phone calls. Things he would say is, I did not do this. There's nothing for me I have nothing to hide. And regardless of what happens, if you go to the media, whatever, I'm still going to try to find Lacey. And he told Amber, I still love Lacey. Now, does he come across as a creep? Absolutely, 120%. You know, and this was extremely impressionable upon the jury. And it really, like I said, it changed the momentum of the entire case. Everything was going in the direction of the defense until Amber Fry, and more importantly, the tapes of Amber Fry and Scott Peterson talking. Now, it shows that Amber Fry was really just working for the police department. She had no interest in pursuing the relationship. Now, another part of the testimony after Amber Fry gets off is they put up this fisherman. It said, oh, you can easily throw a 150-pound fish out of a boat, and, you know, so you can do that with the body, no problem. So they allowed this fisherman, right, which I'm not quite sure what his credentials would be. You know, he catches fish. Terrific. How often do you throw a 150-pound fish back? Probably never, right? So keep in mind, Scott's got a 14-foot boat. Okay, 14 feet is tiny for a boat. Extremely tiny. I do not think this boat is seaworthy, in my opinion, not even bay-worthy. But you know, this was just a huge point of contention between the defense and the prosecution. Now, the defense actually created videos where they're trying to throw a 100-pound weight out of the boat exact same boat that Scott has. And the boat capsized every single time, right? So he's got 150-pound Lacey, or even say she's 130, 120, whatever. And then he's got 5 8-pound anchors. So say she's 120 pounds. It's 160 pounds. 150 to 200 pounds. He's trying to throw overboard, right? They're trying to throw 100 pounds overboard, and it's capsizing the boat. Now, I think an even more important part to this is there's no scratches from the anchors on the side of the boat. None at all. Okay? And the judge refused to allow the video evidence from the defense showing this experiment, but they allowed the fishermen. How is that fair? I just don't understand it. Next thing is they have a dog come up, a dog and her handler, and a dog allegedly traced Lacey's scent to the docks, right exactly where Scott launched his boat. Okay, so first off, the dog and the trainer failed the 2 prior certification tests. Failed both of them because they've got it on video. The dog's going off in the wrong complete opposite direction of where they're supposed to go. Failed 2 tests before doing this, right before, and the last 2 tests. Not 2 random ones, the last 2. So they took a compromised piece of evidence, which Scott had touched, had the dog smell it, as both Scott and Lacey had touched this, and then took the dog to the marina, and the dog allegedly went up right to where Scott launched the boat. Well, duh, it was something Scott had touched. Of course it's going to come up that way. I mean, not that you should believe this dog at all, but here's the kicker. There was another dog team that was on site, and they failed to find that. Only this dog that failed 2 prior tests with a compromised piece of evidence was able to trace it. Think about that. Another dog team could not find it. Now, usually they have multiple dog teams. So in some way, somehow they should have been able to do this, but they didn't. Should have had some sort of corroboration, had 0 corroboration. 1 dog, 1 trainer, and both had failed the test. So it just makes me wonder, at the end of the day, what do you think? What do you think about this? Now, this is the crazy part to me, especially Rochelle. Rochelle was super adamant about this dog evidence, despite all of these problems. Like, they don't even hear the problems. Some people think that this is junk science, and I happen to believe that it's good circumstantial evidence. But if you're using a tainted trainer and dog that's failed tests, recently failed tests, and a compromised piece of evidence, I mean, I just don't understand. I really, really, really don't understand how they could take that seriously. But it just shows you it was about emotion. It wasn't about evidence, all about emotion. Now, like I said before, most powerful evidence of the entire case is the location of the body. Period, end of story. The location of the body is what convicted Scott. If they had been found, if Connor and Lacey had been found anywhere else other than the bay, he would be cleared, because there's literally 0 evidence anywhere. Now, a tide expert said that Connor was put in the water where Scott was fishing. Now, Connor was found 1 mile from where Lacey's torso was found, because Lacey was allegedly weighed down. Now, only Lacey's torso came up, okay? Only Lacey, and what they described, the prosecution, being they, said that the tidal waves actually forced Connor out of the stomach and forced out all the internal organs. Now, forensic pathologists said that this was not possible, testified this was not possible. They had never encountered anything like this. And it couldn't do what the prosecution asserts, but that didn't matter. That didn't matter. So that brings into in the question the exact time of death, right? Was it the 23rd, like they originally said? Was it the 24th, where they tried to settle on? Or was it the 29th, like the defense expert says? Now, that being said, the defense expert, which we'll get to here in just a moment, he completely disagrees. He does really well under a defense examination, but just crumbles under the prosecution. Now, Scott's location had obviously been broadcasted 24/7, 365 for, what, a year and a half, 2 years? And the juries just didn't believe that someone could have framed Scott, or doesn't believe that somebody could have heard that and said, I'll go ahead and dump the body here where the husband was. The jurors just didn't believe it, especially Rochelle and juror number 8. I don't even care to know his name. If I do an episode on him, we'll get his name, but what a scumbag that guy is. Anyway, so his location broadcast 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, all over TV, right? Juries didn't believe someone could frame Scott. Now, the time of death for Connor was believed to be December 29th for the defense. Dr. March said that this is the absolute earliest that it could have been, and criticized the prosecution's witness method as flawed. So basically the methods that he was using to date Connor's birth was flawed, or death date, sorry. Now, under cross-examination, it really frazzled the witness. Dr. March was super frazzled, started running his hand through his hair, and he made a minor mistake on his report, like a number, something very minor, and just said, cut me some slack, yelled this at the prosecution. And after that issue was kind of resolved, what have you, all of the defense, or not the defense, sorry, all of the jurors put down their notepads and their pens and just stopped listening to him. So after that fact, he was no longer even credible. Now, one thing to remember about these cases, one mess up, one contradiction can completely blow a defense case. Now, it doesn't matter that the prosecution has had multiple mess ups, contradictions. Juries tend to be more favoring towards the prosecution. Now, we'll go back to the witness statement, the neighbor that said she found the dog around 10:18, and they're using this to dismiss all the other witnesses. And here's the problem. Garagos, in his opening statement, which was great, had a great opening statement, basically said that he's going to parade all these witnesses that are 100%, these witnesses are certain of what they saw. Their time frames may be off a little bit, but they're certain of what they saw. And they gave the police the times that they gave them, right? So all Garagos had to do was actually go through and prep these people, right? He was afraid to bring the witnesses due to contradictions in their statements. Oh, this witness said, the prosecution witness said 10:18, she put the dog Mackenzie back behind the Peterson's gate. Then you got this guy saying you saw her at 10:45, this one at 11, and so on and so forth. And he was afraid that those contradictions would create confusion. Well, at the very least, yeah, it would create confusion and reasonable doubt, in my opinion, and in the opinion of most people that are familiar with this case. It would have created reasonable doubt for me. Okay, so Garagos afraid to bring up these witnesses, and what the prosecution does is so bizarre. They parade these witnesses up in front of the jury that walk dogs in the neighborhood, just women, and they all happen to be kind of short, chubby women, to prove that it was not Lacey. And that maybe, just maybe, it was one of these women that they saw and not Lacey, though none of them met the physical description. And then here's the kicker. Not one of them said that they walked their dog on that Christmas Eve. Not one. Under defense cross-examination said, no, we didn't walk our dog that day. They didn't walk him that day. That's the crazy part. So the concession that Lacey was alive on the 24th was enough for Garagos, in his opinion. This is where I think he went wrong. This is where Geragos lost the case, is not bringing those witnesses up to come up and talk and at least say their piece. And I think that's the problem, is when you start thinking for witnesses, you'll leave the narrative behind. Now, this was a 5-month trial, a long trial, a lot of information for these people to go through. It's like drinking water through a fire hose. Now, the prosecution kind of used an emotion-based closing with no evidence. Well, not kind of, completely. There was zero evidence discussed. It was, here's a picture of Lacey, and here's a picture of Scott and Amber, and these pictures were taken at the same time. Scott wanted out of this life, even though there's really no proof for any of what they're saying. Just emotional. No evidence, because they don't have any evidence. Scott wanted out of this life, so he made that happen. He wanted to start this new relationship, fresh, with no kid, not having to pay child support or alimony or anything like that. Basically substitute emotion for that evidence and basically give them a cheating husband. He's guilty of cheating, so he's guilty of murder. Now, the closing arguments were the exact opposite of the opening statement for Geragos. The closing was very flat, boring. It wasn't this kind of bombastic, over the top, I'm going to show you all the evidence, here it is. Really what he should have done is left them with the actual evidence. This is what the prosecution said. This is what was not true. Here's what we're saying, and so on and so forth. I'm not a lawyer myself, but anybody can plainly see that it was a foolish pursuit. Coming in with a flat, boring, you want to go out on top, not very, low and boring and flat. So Scott's family was actually quite confident going into the closing arguments that the state didn't prove their case, which they really didn't. The defense was thinking, okay, we've got a hung jury. We've definitely got a couple people on that jury that are with us. Definitely have a couple. Now, this is where it gets interesting. So Nancy Grace as well. Keep in mind, she thought it was a hung jury or not guilty. Nancy Grace, right? She'd prosecute a hot dog if it was too steamy. This woman thought it was a hung jury or not guilty. Now, one thing we should never underestimate is the power of emotion. And I definitely think that that's something that the defense should have used. They should have used emotion right back as a weapon against prosecution. But, it is what it is. And you have all these jurors saying, we were committed to a fair trial. Bullshit. Now, they get in there, and in the first couple days of deliberation, a juror admits that she violated the order. She violated the order of not looking into certain evidence, right? So keep in mind, when they got in there, they took a vote, and it was a 10-2 vote. Now, you have this person that's removed from the jury, and then you have the foreman who had stacks and stacks and stacks of notes that he took during this whole trial, right? Stacks and stacks of notes, the only one really paying attention. So they remove this juror, they bring in a single mother that's bent on guilty. That's Rachel, okay? Now, the foreman, Gregory Jackson, which is the other not guilty vote, like I said, stacks and stacks of notes, and he wanted to go through each and everything logically. These are his statements, by the way. Wanted to go through each and everything logically. And I wouldn't say that he was pro-innocent, but he said, look, I'm not comfortable voting guilty. We need to go through these until we can be convinced of his guilt. Everyone else is angry, flustered, and they force him off as foreman, right? So they're trying to get rid of him as foreman. And then juror number 8 threatened his life, threatened to kill him. And now juror number 8 denies this, but the other jurors don't. They said, oh yeah, he was hot-tempered, threatened to beat him up and kill him and all this. So they got the only holdout left removed from the case. I'll repeat that again. First woman, obvious violation. She went and looked something up that the defense said, found out it was true, and she was kicked off the case the next day because guess who? Juror number 8 goes to the judge, gets her thrown off. And then juror number 8 goes to the judge to get number 1 removed as foreman. And the foreman, Gregory Jackson, fearing for his life, asked to be removed from the case. Now, why juror number 8 was never removed? They should have removed juror number 8 and not number 1, in my humble, well, not so humble opinion. You know, juror number 8 believed that Scott was 100% guilty 100% of the time. At no point did he believe any other way. So now a new juror comes in, and within 24 hours, they have a vote, 12-0 guilty. So this particular juror seated Thursday on the 11th, November 11th, and they have a verdict first thing in the morning, November 12th. Huh? How is that possible? That's suspicious, okay? How do you bring somebody in where you have to start over? You have to go through all the evidence again, all the testimony. How do you bring somebody in one day and then the next morning you've got a guilty vote? How is that possible? And how is it they allow these people on the jury that come in bent on guilty? Okay, but you know, like Rochelle, sorry. Rochelle comes in and says, you know, okay, let's take a vote. Let's just do, you know, let's get this done and guilty. It clearly shows you where she stood. Now, the interesting thing, I'm going to tell a story in just a moment about this middle juror right here, because he was on Larry King, and Larry asked him, so how do you think the crime was committed? And he's like, well, can you clarify the question? And Larry's like, what do you mean? You're the jury member. No, I can't clarify the question. You're the juror. How did he do it? How did he kill her? So I guess I'll just tell him now. You're the juror. How did he do it? And he's kind of hemming and hawing. He's like, well, you know, sometime between the 23rd and the 24th, you know, Scott took her either, you know, killed her either in his house, his car, or his boat, or in the marina. I'm just like, what? The who is the only thing they get. They get like, okay, we know who did it. That's in their minds, right? They don't know how it was done. They don't know where it was done, and they don't know when it was done. They know nothing about this crime. No theories even. Zero theories, right? So anyways, not to harp on that one, but so November 12th, they read the verdict. Now, that is not nearly enough time to go through the evidence. I'm sorry, you have a 5-month trial. There is absolutely no way possible in one day you can go through all the evidence on a 5-month trial, all the testimony, and actually be able to give a fair verdict. It's not possible. Now, Scott, in his mind, from what he says, knowing he was not guilty, was optimistic. You know, he thought, great, I'm going to get out of here. I'm going to go home. You know, at this point, Garagos and Mark Garagos and Scott's family, they were actually gone because they knew in their minds there's no way they could go through all that evidence in 24 hours. We're going to go home, get some rest, and come back the next day. Well, they were not in the courtroom when the verdict was read. Now, the jury's brought out, and there's an African-American juror in the front row, and she looks over at Sharon Rocha, and she winks at her. The local reporter's like, oh my goodness. You know, it's very clear that there's some bias here. If you can't see it, I, you know, don't know what to tell you. Anyway, so Scott said after the reading of the verdict, the guilty verdicts, said basically everything just went silent and numb. And his vision started blurring, and he had this sensation of falling forward. Now, imagine if you're a guilty person and you find this out. You have no idea what's coming because you believe in the system. You believe that the system will work for you. And all of a sudden you hear that verdict. Guilty, first-degree murder. Lacey Peterson. Guilty, first-degree murder. Connor Peterson. I just couldn't imagine. Now, Sharon Rocha, obviously filled with emotion, started bawling her eyes out because she's actually been very strong throughout the rest of the case. And I really feel bad. My heart does go out to Sharon Rocha because she's just a pawn in this game. She's just being used to cheerlead for the prosecution. And they trot her out to make Scott look as guilty as possible. And it's just sad. Now, at this point, there's cheering and jubilation outside of the courtroom. Everybody just, oh, thank you, Jesus. Thank you, God. Wonderful day. Yeah, we got this innocent man in jail, or at least at the very least, a not guilty man. Now, the family got no time to interact with Scott. They're immediately let out in front of this giant mob going the long way down the building. So they hear this sickening and disgusting mob telling them, oh, guilty, it's going to San Quentin, still illegal to kill people in the United States and California. Scott's a murderer, and could you imagine that? I mean, at least have some dignity, people. So they're immediately rushed out. And 2 weeks after is the death penalty phase. Okay. Now, keep in mind, all these jurors, they're not sequestered, not even for the 2-week period. All these jurors are out listening to media about how wonderful of a job they did. They did such a wonderful job. And they're exposed to really how happy the public was for convicting Scott. Now, juror number 8, along with a couple other jurors, went into a bar and basically told this bartender, we're going to get Scott. They've already made a decision that we're going to put Scott to death. And he's talking about book deals. He's going to put Scott to death. And so the decision was already made. And it just goes to show you, I wonder how many of these jurors got book deals after this. We know Amber Frey got 2. And I haven't been able to find out how much money she's made from it, but I would estimate at least $1 million. I mean, she got sued for $250,000 on one of her last books because she didn't follow through. So I would assume that's at least her advance. Now, today she has a net worth of about $500,000, and she's a massage therapist. Do the math. She's got a net worth of $500,000 today. I mean, she got a lot more than that. She's been living off it. Now, after all of this, juror number 8 going in, bragging about how he's going to do this. The neighbor of that bartender is an attorney and officer of the court. So if you're an attorney, you're considered an officer of the court. And the neighbor says, yeah, the jurors came in, they're bragging about how they're going to get him and talking about the case and everything you're not supposed to do. Well, she legally has to report this to the judge. She reports it to the judge, and they actually have a hearing. They bring the bartender up. The bartender pleads the 5th because he's got a lawyer with him and just wants to stay out of it. Well, this, at the end of the day, still didn't remove juror number 8. This juror number 8 is something else, man. It should have been enough. If you're going to remove Justin Falconer over just some basic comments and only the word of juror number 8, which is clearly a liar, it clearly has been a complete catastrophe since the minute he got involved in this case. Definitely a stealth juror. I have no doubt in my mind. There's more than enough evidence to prove that juror number 8 was a problem. And I mean, honestly, I think he should be in jail for fraud. It's ridiculous. He should have been removed several times, but that is what it is. And these jurors getting together to remove any dissenting jurors is just bizarre. And the very fact that you had so many jurors removed means he needed a new trial, period. He needed a new trial. Now, Sharon Rocha apparently had the most impact on the jury during her impact statement. However, they already had their mind made up. They already decided we're going to kill him. And how they could do that just so whimsically, it's just amazing to me. I'll never understand how somebody could take a life so easily. If Scott did do it, then they're no better than Scott. And they need to look at themselves in the mirror and see if they like the reflection. Now, Gloria Allred described this as justice. But Justice, you got a payday, Gloria? Because you don't do anything for free. You don't do these random people's cases. All you do is these high profile cases that can get you media coverage and money. So I don't believe Gloria Allred. Like I said, I think her law license should be taken. There's no good that she serves. You know, she's defended a couple of good women, represented them, but both her and her daughter, Lisa Bloom, that type of representation needs to be removed. Now, immediately after the death penalty, the jurors are coming out, you know, just all excited and happy. And, you know, they're talking about book deals. They're talking about book deals after the death penalty is decided. They're coming out, they're talking about book deals. You know, Rochelle calls Scott an asshole, and they're just all very emotional and, you know, just so happy. And, you know, they're all going to make this money now. You know, like I said, juror number 8, number 6, I mean, a bunch of these. Rochelle, I think she took 7 spots. Piece of work. They all, juror number 8 should be in jail. But the rest of them should have been dismissed, but whatever. I digress. Like I said, Amber's made a bunch of money from this, and I'm sure Gloria Allred has too. I don't even need to look up her. I know she's made money from this. Now, here's where we get into the rub, okay? After the death penalty, after all of this trial, everything, they found tips on the tip line. What do you know? Why did the police not look through the tip line? I mean, this is their duty. This is what they're supposed to do. And a police officer had left a tip, a lieutenant. So not just some beat cop, a lieutenant made a tip. Okay, and the burglar's brother was taped saying that Lacey had confronted them on the 24th, had confronted the burglars on the 24th of December, and basically because they were burglarizing the neighbor's house. And, you know, they had a confrontation, and apparently Lacey went back to her house or what have you. Now, there's the dinger. There is reasonable doubt. And at the very least, the jury didn't have the full picture. And this is what's terrifying to me, is all of this evidence, juror number 8, Amber Fry, you know, all of these things, emotion, you know, the things that don't deserve a place in the courtroom. Yes, there's righteous indignation and there's outrage, but you need to be able to separate that from fact and fiction. And this is where I have a problem. Let me know what you think in the comments. Was there enough evidence to convict Scott? Should this other evidence have been allowed in? You know, what do you think at the end of everything? Is Scott guilty or not guilty? Next episode is going to be about all the information that's come out since the trial. And then I'll probably do another one about juror 8. So I've probably got a good 3 or 4 more episodes left. I mean, I might be speaking too soon. I might have 5 or 6 more. But at the very least, I have 3 or 4 more. And I've got a ton more information to go through. You know, I'm going to try and have a third-party chat with another person just to go over the evidence to see what she thinks, and then take it from there. This is Josh from True Crime Phenomenon. Our Phenom of the Week is Scott Peterson. This is episode number 6, The Verdict. Please like, share, subscribe, and comment below. Really want to know what you think. Do you think there's enough evidence to convict Scott? If you think there is, put a G. If you don't think there's enough evidence, put NG. Either way, I'd love to know what you think about this case. All right, have a wonderful day. I'll be back in the next day or two with the next episode for Scott Peterson, and then I'm also working on another episode for Luca Rocco Magnotta, True Boner of the Week. Thank you.